so those are definitely third degree, so you're gonna wanna run it under some cool water.
Okay, so guys, you were primarily known for, your horror movies that you've done in the past, and this is a pretty big departure, especially the comedy elements for it. So what inspired this direction that you took?
Well, listen, we've always wanted to make action movies. We loved action movies growing up. It was a point of bonding for us creatively when we first started working together, when we first met each other as randomly assigned roommates at NYU.
Watched Commando a lot.
Yeah, we watched movies like Commando quite a bit. But it's really hard to make action movies. Especially it's hard to do it earlier in your career. They tend to cost more money, and so it's kind of hard for a first-time filmmaker to go, hey, can you give me $20 million to go make an action movie? So we finally had sort of built up the cachet that we could potentially think about doing an action movie, but all the scripts that we were seeing, the scripts that were being submitted to us, all felt a little too down the middle for us. We always want there to be something unique and something surprising about the movies that we come onto. And when we read the script for Novocaine, we realized that it was sort of perfect for us because it just has such an unexpected protagonist in Nate, someone who can't fight, someone who does not belong in an action movie at all. And that juxtaposition of putting this sort of innocent person who has no skills whatsoever in the ecosystem of an action movie up against these really dangerous adversaries, it just had so many opportunities for humor and for really fun, original set piece design. So it had kind of all of the stats that we needed to get excited.
Yeah, we needed to have something that we felt like would stick out, and I think so many action movies are similar in that your protagonist knows how to fight and they're kicking ass and they kick 8 guys' asses, and then the next fight they kick 12 guys' asses and all that stuff. And so we just, this felt so different to us because he is getting his ass kicked for the majority of every fight in the movie. And it's only at the very end of each of them that he comes up with some quirky way to win, And so we always said that if we wanted to get into action, it had to be something that felt really unique. And this was exactly that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you approach it. It's such a weird, the way you approach it, because he doesn't feel pain, you can't do that like you do any other action movie. So what were the challenges of doing something like that? I mean, there's probably just pretty intense to figure out.
Well, I mean, it was honestly, Jack had to train himself to be able to get punched and not flinch. Your whole life as an actor, you're getting punched and flinching. That's part of the job, And I think he had to kind of disconnect those two things and kind of like do something different with his face than the rest of his body was doing. And that's something that takes practice. It's something that we worked on a lot with our stunt coordinator, and yet it's a balance because you don't want to look like the T-1000, like there's no reaction at all. Like he's still worried, he's still, anxious about what might happen to his body, but it's not pain. He's never wincing in the movie. And so, yeah, that's absolutely, a difficult thing. And then taking that and extending it and being like, okay, how can we utilize this in each fight scene? Like what is a way that he can create a painful environment that, his body can handle, but his opponents can't, and yet is not going to kill him. Obviously, you can't just light the whole room on fire because you're going to burn to death. So like, what can it be that how can he utilize this to his advantage? And that was just a really fun thought exercise that we had.
Yeah, and then we were very concerned about the idea. When we were prepping the movie, we were taking our pass on the script. We were like, all right, well, one huge Achilles heel is like, what if the fact that he's not wincing when he gets hit means that the audience isn't going to wince? What if the audience is like, well, I don't feel a fucking thing because this guy doesn't either? The whole movie would fall apart if that was the case. And we were watching a lot of movies in prep, just, references and just good movies and stuff just to get ourselves in the right mindset. And we were watching Eastern Promises, and there's a scene where there's like a frozen corpse and a finger is cut off of the corpse. And we both were like, oh! And then we looked at each other, we were like, wait, it works. If a frozen corpse getting their finger cut off makes us cringe, then of course it's going to work when it's like a living, breathing character. So that was actually a very validating.
Yeah. And yet in this too, like unlike Eastern Promises, like this movie is like really funny, and so you kind of like it allows it to be more gory because there's jokes built into it, and so you, the audience, get a second to kind of laugh about it as it's happening. Whereas if this movie was dead serious and had as much gore in it as it does, I think you'd have people walk out because they'd be like, this feels like just violence for violence sake or whatever. And this is it's so much more fun, and also more, because there's plenty of torture porn style movies out there if you're into that kind of thing, and so we wanted to differentiate ourselves and be like, okay, this is like, there's some torture-y stuff, but it's fun. There's gore, but it's funny, and so hopefully the people who would normally be a little turned off by the gore can still enjoy this movie because you're having such a good time watching these bones being broken and flesh being torn open. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the heart of it, obviously, you kind of touched on it, but the heart of it is this romance between Jack and Amber Midthunder's character, and that kind of drives the entire narrative, obviously. But their chemistry that they have is so good. Yeah. So, what made them perfect for this film and this pairing?
I mean, they were both perfect in their own ways for each of the roles. We didn't know, you never know if the chemistry was going to be there. But once we all got down to Cape Town and had our first dinner, and once we had really gotten to know each of them and realized what incredible people they both are, in addition to being amazing performers, they're both so kind and generous. And once we put them in a room to start rehearsing, we realized they were just puzzle piece actors, where they have the same exact approach to scenes. They're both very cerebral. They're both very generous scene partners. They were always constantly checking on each other, making sure that was that cool in that take when I did that. It was the most courteous, warm relationship between two actors, and that chemistry was essential. Like you said, I mean, if you don't believe that Nate is going to risk his life for Sherry, the entire movie falls apart, and you'd have people walking out for an entirely different reason. They're just this isn't believable. Why the fuck is this guy doing this? Yes. You're just doing this to tell the story that you want to tell. But it really did work because they both are just so magnetic and for one another. By minute 25 of this movie, you're like, I am dying for these two to get together.